Listen up. There's a good chance you shouldn't buy a home this year. Oh, this is a question we get a lot, right?
Yes.
Especially as people are looking to their next year goals. If they're renting or buying, what is the best for them?
Totally.
I think a lot of times it's hard for people to look holistically at what they're looking to do. For the rental option, I think the biggest thing that it adds to the equation is convenience. You can be transient and you can be in a convenient style, right? You can come in and you can leave, not when you want, but on a allotted time frame. Every 12 months you can decide what you do next.
Yep.
You're not locked in. You don't have to worry about some of the longer term objectives. Yep. So when somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm moving to Chicago for 2 years, and then I'm getting to leave and I'm not going to stay longer. I've got a residency, I've got a work contract, something like that, but it's a limited amount of time. Right off the bat, that's somebody that I'm either going to tell I would absolutely be looking to rent if you are interested in buying, because obviously there are some financial investments in that. Then the thought process has to be longer than when they're here, right? Kind of like we were talking about investments before. We have a lot of people that say, hey, I'm only going to be there for 2 years, but maybe I'll buy there and then I rent it out after that.
Yeah, because then you have closing costs that you have to factor in. A lot of people forget just the month. They think of just the monthly payment.
Yep.
Like, oh, I can afford this. But the closing cost is what really hinders that 2 year sub plan.
For certain. We always talk about the cost to sell and the cost to buy. I roughly say, right, before any new taxes or anything changes, if you add together both sides, it's typically going to be somewhere between 10 to 11% for the cost to sell and buy of that purchase price. So if we're thinking 2 years and we're just looking to break even on pricing, not talking about the equity you've earned or anything like that, you're basically hedging a bet and saying, I need this property to appreciate at least 5 to 6% every year for me to break even. Yeah. 5 to 6% a year for us is a pretty hefty number from that perspective. So you and I, tend to be a little bit more conservative in that, saying, hey, if you're in and out in 2 years and you don't want to stick around any longer, you don't want to hold property in Chicago,
put more money down, or just have flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a rent all day long, unless the market's at a very, very unusual point, which obviously we don't talk, we don't know that stuff till we're in it. But if you need the flexibility to move in that. Now, on the other hand, you're looking to buy, right? You think you might be a buyer. If you are planning to be in your next home for 3 to 5 years, right? That's somebody that realistically should be taking a good consideration at becoming a buyer, because, as I say, I really like all the people that rent my rental properties because they're paying my mortgage down. Yeah. So if you're a renter and you plan to be there for a longer period of time, you're doing that for somebody else. Now, one of the big hesitancies that I think we get is especially with young first-time buyers, right? And this is typically a younger conversation. Yeah. People are at a forefront of saying, I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I don't know if my job's going to change, my relationship status is going to change. If I'm in a relationship, I don't know if I'm going to have babies by then. There's a lot of things that could impact somebody and almost paralyze them from moving forward because they're so scared of that. Right?
Yeah, it's commitment.
So what do we talk about? We talk about one of the biggest features that I look for in a home for somebody that is unsure of where their life path is taking them. Flexibility. It's a magic word. Flexibility. What does flexibility mean? It means that how you live in the space can be flexible. There's room for a work from home office. There's room if a child comes. There's room if the spouse moves in. The floor plan has the ability to grow or change with your needs of it versus just being something that works one way. Yeah. Or, as we talked about, the ability to you move on and rent it out. That's flexibility and an option as well. But if you are looking to buy, but you're hesitant to buy because you're afraid that your life pattern might change, make sure the property has some flexibility in A, how you live in it, B, what you do with it when it no longer suits you. Yeah. So I think that's really an important thing.
And make sure you're trying to rent it longer term, because that can affect it too. Because if we only have a renter in for 1 year to build some equity up, it may not show well. We may have issues showing it like that. So it really is, it's a longer term play no matter what.
Yes.
So no matter what, you should be looking at 4 to 5 years.
Exactly. And as we say, we're going to advise somebody 4 to 5 years. If things look great in 2 years, we can absolutely run with it, right? If the market's at a point where you're going to do well, that's fine. but that's typically not the plan. We don't plan on the what ifs, we plan on the tried and tested. And if the what ifs present themselves, then we can jump on and we can enjoy that ride.
Totally.
So no, that's, I mean, realistically why we talk so much about flexibility in a home purchase, right? Flexibility of space, flexibility of how you use it, flexibility in your longer term plan. If you come in to a home purchase with options, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C, no matter what happens in the marketplace, you're going to be able to fare well. And no matter what happens in your own life circumstances, you're going to do fine as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, the other thing that I was going to point out is we have that new app, like tool that we have access to that can calculate the rent to own and like those and see like where the break even point is, like versus what your cost is for renting versus your purchase price and all of that. So it kind of is a cool inverse.
Yeah, no, even that though, it shows you where the actual break even point
with
is.
Closing costs.
But it also doesn't talk to you about your equity.
It doesn't.
So it'll say like, here's the absolute date in which all your numbers will, from an expense standpoint, where it will, and we're happy to run it for everybody, or anybody, one of the two, and everybody and everybody. No, but it basically shows you where your cost is identical. Usually that number is somewhere between 2.5 to 3 years, but that doesn't take into account any of the financial gains through paying down equity, any appreciation. Well, no, we can do it with appreciation.
Yeah, we can do it with appreciation.
Just not the equity.
And we can do it with appreciation of rent over time.
For certain.
Like that's because
rentals get expensive every year. So yeah. No, it's in, you know, as we always say, it's a more specific conversation, but there's a lot of good food for thought in terms of if you're thinking about if 2024 is the year that you do go from a renter to a buyer, there's a few things to run with.
Well, actually, I had a client reach out to me this week about this question.
Yeah?
And so like, he found his dream apartment. It overlooks Wrigley Field.
Okay.
And that is like, he wanted it from his living room. It's a rental building though.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I love this. I do not want to move, but I want to park my money into real estate so that I'm at least building equity. And so we like talked about, okay, well, what are the break-even points? Does it make sense for you to actually buy an investment property on the side while you rent
for yourself?
And he's like, it may make sense. At least like, I know I'm renting, but at least I'm building something up because that was something that's so unique. And unfortunately our market, because there's not a ton of new construction, all of it is rental properties.
There's a lot of newer rental buildings.
Want certain amenities, certain lifestyle things, that is one option, but you could always do something on the side as well.
For certain.
If you wanted to.
No, there's different ways for certain.
Yeah, no right or wrong way.